Welcome to Fit to Speak from the Archives. I'm Eugene Obah, glad as ever to be with you. As the United Football League is about to commence the halfway point of the regular season, I will provide my interim assessment as to how the league is doing, including guests talking about the hot button topics of attendance and ratings in a few minutes. And later in the show, we will take a trip down memory lane and revisit my 2023 conversation with Reid Johnson, the host of the Markcast, at a time in which the XFL and USFL were separate leagues. But before we get to my commentary about the UFL, I just want to take a brief moment on behalf of everyone at Common Sense Entertainment and CSE Media, which produces this program, to thank all of you for your overwhelming, record-breaking viewership, and not to mention your kind words over the first 3 weeks of the new season of this program, and in the weeks that have followed, in which we have discussed the case of missing broadcast media professional and the University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, and the ways that you can help with Crime Redefined hosts Mehul Anjaria and Dion Mitchell. We also had our two-part exclusive with Terrence's father, Terrence Woods Sr., which unearthed even greater insight and never-before-revealed claims that you have to hear for yourself. We'll have the links to all of our coverage of this case in the description below. It is imperative that this story continues to be told, as Terrence's case, which goes back to October of 2018 when he went missing, is one that, quite frankly, has not received the fervor of coverage that other missing persons cases, most other missing persons cases, get. And what is equally as important as the attention that needs to be paid to Terrence's case are the actions to solve this case, and the actions that are being taken by Mehul and Dion, who, as mentioned earlier, were on our season premiere, are the most comprehensive to date. In fact, they have experts, they have retired law enforcement officials and others who are on standby, who are ready to join in on the independent investigation that both Mehul and Dion are crowdfunding, but they need the funding to really make this happen in earnest. So please consider donating to the investigatory efforts at gofundme.com/investigating-the-disappearance-of-Terrence-Woods. We do have the link in the description below, and it has detailed information as to how the investigation will be conducted. You can be the difference maker in this case, and as developments warrant, we will bring them to you right here on this program, as well as the regular edition of Fit to Speak, which will return later this year. While we were away amid the seismic shifts in college basketball and the WNBA, spring football has returned in the form of the UFL, not to be confused with the one that existed in 2009, or even the one that existed in the 60s. Wow, I'll bet you didn't know that. Spring football is not exactly a novel thing, especially in recent times. You see, we had the AAF in 2019, which ran out of money halfway through its season, the XFL, which got shortened because of COVID, the USFL, which got through its 2 seasons, albeit with hubs and most games that had the atmosphere of a tomb, and then the XFL again, which actually had crowds and actually completed its season, the first since 2001, that 2001 season, which included such things like the Scramble and this.
This is the XFL!
So here we are again in 2024, this time with both the XFL and USFL uniting as one, both former leagues, now conferences. What do I make of this as the UFL enters week 5? Did spring really just get stronger? In some ways, particularly ratings, great success, in the wise words of Borat. In other ways, especially attendance in some markets,
Not so much.
overall, I'd give the league a solid B. Much of the games have been quite entertaining, many games down to the wire. Every second matters in the league, and that category gets an A+. Here I was at Audi Field in DC. I even got a fellow industry professional to join me for his first UFL game, and he liked it. What else is there to like? The gameplay. The consolidation has helped tremendously for a lot of teams. What bumps it up to an A for me are the kickers. The kickers, I mean, yowza. They have been amazing. Jake Bates of the Michigan Panthers, who has not kicked a field goal since high school. High school, certainly a Justin Tucker in the making. And although there's been a varying degree of success in some markets, the games are being played in all of the markets. More on that in a bit, but that part of it alone deserves an A plus. The ratings an A, or maybe even an A plus, depending on how you look at things. They thus far have exceeded the averages of the XFL and the USFL. And considering where the XFL was during March Madness, this after having started in February of last year compared to now, I think we may have the answer as to whether or not starting in March is a good idea. Now, personally, I've warmed up to the idea. Now, yes, there is something to be said about having a start time after the Super Bowl, keeping the momentum going, with football and everything else. And that might have to happen if more teams are to be added to this league. That's even assumes that this league has a future to begin with. But based on ratings, I think that there is a lot to be said about having that March start time. I think that it allows for people now to miss football just a little bit. But based on the performance of some markets, most notably the USFL conference markets in this merger, with the possible exception of Birmingham. Now, Birmingham, last Saturday, if you recall, there was a weather delay. But still, with the possible exception of Birmingham, it seems that the public in the USFL conference markets, particularly Memphis with the showboats, have gone fishing. And it is with that that the attendance overall gets a C from me. Now, the showboats even got notice from Executive Vice President of Football Operations and former USFL President Daryl Johnson stating, quote, "They're low. We could all take a look over there. It's not where we want it to be." He went on to say, quote, "We had decent numbers with the home opener last year, but not what we anticipated, and they were never able to match those again moving forward. We definitely need to take a long, hard look at what's going on here in Memphis. What can we do to continue to build the relationship between the UFL and the community to generate the interest to come out here? We feel that it's a good product, and where's the disconnect? Why are we not connecting with the community here? It is what it is right now." I'll help Moose answer that in a bit, but there has been a lot of debate, especially among the social media channels, as to whether or not ratings or attendance, especially numbers as bad as they are for Memphis and the USFL conference as a whole, really matter for the league's long-term success. And what I say is that it is not an either or. Multiple things can be true at the same time. And both those factors, I think, are essential. Both factors, attendance and ratings, are essential for the survival of this league. Why? Well, first, let us take attendance. We are starting to see 4 weeks in the manifestations of certain decisions the USFL made when they were a league in building a fan base or lack thereof. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Intangibles matter, optics matter. The NFL and the NCAA have had well over a century of history. They have had a very long runway. They can afford to make mistakes. They can afford to have games not played in front of fans, COVID years or not, and people still watch in their millions. Spring leagues do not have any of that. They do not have that luxury, which is why I, much to the chagrin of the USFL cheering section, was very heavy in criticizing the league in the past 2 years of the regular edition of Fit to Speak about almost every aspect of the league outside of gameplay. This is from a spring football game held last month at the University of Maryland, an exhibition game at that. And far more people attended that than most USFL games, and that was just at the lower section that I took a picture of. How can the USFL expect to engender a fan base, to build a fan base, build, that groundswell of support when most of these teams do not play in the home markets. It was looking like one of those Jeb Bush rallies. Obviously, this was a shot at the XFL. Note that the uniform seen here is similar to the colors of the San Antonio Brahmas of the XFL. It showed that the league had absolutely no confidence whatsoever in their product. No confidence whatsoever. Very, very insecure. The USFL, as currently presented, is a very rushed product. Fox only did this, in my view, to get ahead of the XFL. It also doesn't help that Devion Smith was cut for having the audacity to want pizza as opposed to chicken salad, hearing loud, buzzy drones. But it doesn't mean I have to like it. And keep in mind, they don't play either in Pittsburgh or New Orleans. Well, watching that game on FS1 after coming home from Audi Field and seeing the DC Defenders, I'm sorry, that was right there. Watching that USFL game alone, what was the equivalent for me of televised ambient. I find it a bit amusing, by the way, that the USFL's demo rating for the championship was behind reruns of America's Funniest Home Videos. This tweet from journalist and writer Mike Mitchell responding to a question as to whether or not NBC, which keep in mind just airs some of the games, was happy with the ratings. The answer from all indications? No. Intangibles matter, optics matter, and the league has not done itself any favors in either of those regards. Now, Fox, they aired Super Bowl ads, which makes the USFL's ratings even less impressive. What's worse is that the hub model, albeit with some adjustments, whatever those are, will continue next year. Had the UFL adopted the USFL's model of being in hubs, I can guarantee you that the league, this version of the league, would be dead on arrival. 100% dead on arrival. There's no escaping the fact that you need to have fans in the stands, period. Games are to be immersive experiences. You need to have fans in the stands. And the USFL conference as a whole are paying the price for the poor decision making that was done when the USFL was a league in playing in hubs. It just did not work for them. Now, for some of the teams, I will grant that losing records don't exactly encourage attendance. I always tell people, I've even told athletic departments, that when you win, you have friends. Winning takes care of filling stadiums and arenas, which makes even Birmingham's attendance as back-to-back champions less impressive. And as Sports Illustrated's Mike Mitchell has reported, the numbers for some of the teams were higher than last year. Remember that the USFL did not report attendance figures. Still, it is tough to build a fan base from zero, and that's something that has to be kept in mind if some of the displaced teams from the USFL in the merger come back, particularly those that did not play it down in their home markets. And I'm willing to bet you dollars to donuts that whatever money was saved not playing in those markets when the USFL was a league will evaporate. That is, will be negated with the cost of customer acquisition. Do you know also who else does not want to see empty bleachers? Investors. Now, let's think about it this way, right? Let's think about it this way. If the goal, if the goal is to sell franchises, if the goal is to sell franchises eventually to individual owners, has been indicated, I cannot see how an investor or an investment group worth their salt overlook these attendance numbers and even consider, even have, have that specter of even owning a team that has had no history of attendance. Mercifully, as mentioned earlier, the ratings have been quite good, especially considering the sports calendar, most notably March Madness, both the men's and women's game. The rise of the women's game in particular has truly have been a sight to behold. Higher ratings, especially in the 18 to 49 demo, as was the case last year with the XFL, means that you can command more money for advertisers to run ads in the broadcasts. More money, less problems. Now, already the league has got the army using 10 million of the money that you and I paid in taxes 11 days ago to be a presenting partner. It's a 1-year deal with an option to extend for an additional year. Last year, had the deal been consummated when the league was the XFL, even more taxpayer money would have been used. And there were, and still seemingly are, quite a bit of concerns from the Army, citing ratings, social media demos, and scant numbers at best. Still, if the league is to get another year, and subsequent years for that matter, then it needs every bit of revenue that it can get. Now, the diehards of spring football, they're not going to make or break the league in terms of long-term survival. They are going to seek out the games. They will seek out the stuff no matter what. The real difference maker in this, if the league is to survive, is the casual viewer. And the way that you bring in the casual viewer is with intangibles and optics. Strong intangibles, good intangibles, and good optics. That's going to be the real difference maker here in this. You see that in St. Louis, you see that in DC, and perhaps with time we may see that in San Antonio. Birmingham, though they are undefeated, can do a hell of a lot better in terms of attendance. As far as the weaker teams in the league, particularly Memphis, as Daryl Johnson has stated, uh, they need to right the ship, and they need to do so in short order, even if it means for them and maybe some of the other franchises, perhaps relocating. I wrote last year on our Substack page that the USFL brought very little value, not to mention an inferior kickoff that may have possibly destroyed Donald De La Haye's career to the merger, and the USFL's chickens are really coming home to roost. I invite you to read that along with all of our other pieces at csemedia.substack.com, and do consider subscribing to that page. But for me, the USFL is that one kid in the school group project that brings down everyone's grade. Now, fortunately, there is still time to improve some of these things, and when the regular edition of Fit to Speak returns later this year, I will assess a final grade for the first year of the UFL. But should the league flunk out of the sports ecosystem, it certainly will not be because of the XFL conference. The USFL conference as a whole needs to get their act together on attendance and the intangibles and optics very quickly. Otherwise, they no longer will.
What the XFL is cooking.
Well, UFL, but you get my drift. And joining me now is Reid Johnson, the host of the Markcast. Reid, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on, man. And let's get started, all right?
I appreciate it. Busy time right now in spring football. So,
Oh, of course, now with the USFL getting started for the second season, XFL, we're getting very, very close now to the playoffs, and it has been a long road, Reid, to get to talk about the playoffs. And just for a quick timeline for our viewers, XFL returned in 2020, 20 years after the first iteration. But then, of course, sadly, COVID hit in week 5. Thought that this would not come back, but then Dwayne Johnson, Dana Garcia, and Redbird Capital bought the XFL to the tune of $15 million. There were talks with the CFL, and then which held up the start of the league from 2022 to 2023. And then there was the partnership with the NFL insofar as rules and things, which I predicted, by the way, when Dwayne Johnson introduced the Super Bowl last year. I thought, it's definitely afoot here. We're getting very close to the playoffs, and then the XFL will be coming back for a second season. So based on what you have seen, Reid, of this season at this point, how have you felt about the return of the XFL? What has surprised you, and where do you think this stuff is going?
I would say I'm very whelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. I'm not overwhelmed. We're here. I think as the delays continued from 2020, and then, like you said, they came back, and The Rock and the CFL and all that stuff. The further it got away from 2020, I think fans knew, okay, this isn't going to feel like it did in 2020. I don't think they knew maybe how removed it might feel from 2020, but it certainly feels like we're here. The games are good. We're enjoying it. The gameplay is good, but it's never hit even near the peak that it did back with Vince McMahon and company back in 2020.
Yeah, and I mean the ratings. I know, and we're going to get to the conversation about ratings in just a second. But we know that the first game of 2020 got 3.4 million viewers on the ABC. This go around, it was more like 1.5 million, somewhere in that range. Still okay, but not, as you said, not 2020. We know that even the Seattle, in terms of the attendance. I know you're based out there with the Sea Dragons. The attendance has not been. Yeah, see, you got the you got the 2025 right there in your background right there, which is nice. That is nice right there. And I see you got the Stars jersey as well of the USFL representing that as well. But we know that the attendance has in some of this stuff. I know Seattle has been down. I know that there are a lot of factors may be pertaining to that. The Kraken coming in. What has to be done, I guess, in terms of the league in order to get you to maybe that overwhelmed point?
Depending on who you ask, and people in the league will say that this is all by design, right? Very little money being spent on marketing. There's reports 120,000 spent on marketing, right? So we're not talking millions of dollars in national TV, broadcast and all that. We're leveraging social media, right? A lot. The teams are doing good. We're finally getting on TikTok and everything like that with the league, but unless you live in that online alt football ecosphere, which I do, and a lot of our viewers and listeners do, I don't know how the XFL exists right now, right? If you watch an XFL broadcast, on ESPN or ESPN2, they'll tell you when the next games are. But if you're not watching that, I don't know how you discover when these games are on. And I think they need to do a better job of leveraging, besides just The Rock retweeting things on his Instagram, need to do a better job somehow of figuring out how can we tap into this national marketplace. We have March Madness, the Masters, like all these things going on. Save for the first couple weeks of the XFL, it really feels like it's flown under the radar here. I know ratings have rebounded now in the last couple weeks as they've gone back to more, prime time networks, but it really feels like unless you're already tapped in, you're not discovering it at this point in the season.
Yeah, but then here's the other thing too, as a kind of sort of maybe a little bit of a counter to that. So, like, yes, definitely, unless you are aware of the fact that, okay, the XFL is back, because even among some of the casual sports fans that I know, really, XFL is back? I didn't know this. I didn't know this. But then on the flip side of that, it's like, had they spent the money on, say, promotion and things of that nature, and then we started off, the league that had started off with the ratings of, say, last time, 3.3, 3.4, and then by the time March Madness hit, we get around 1,500,000. Then the narrative would have been, oh, this league is crashing and burning, that sort of thing. This is not going to work. Spring football is not going to work. So what do you make of that argument? And what this is like now the third attempt with the XFL. USFL is coming back, has come back. It's coming back for a second season, that sort of thing. So now you have two major spring leagues trying to make it. So riff on that a little bit. What does that kind of sort of look like?
I would still, when you're talking about spending more money, I would still rather go from great ratings to, not so great ratings than not very good to worse ratings. I mean, because the narrative when the XFL came out here week one was, hey, it debuted, it was 50% whatever down than it was back in 2020. So if you're already going to go down from there, I would rather start higher than 50%. But we're recording this Friday, USFL kickoff this weekend. That's why I got all my garb on today. I think the USFL is going to come out really strong this weekend, and I think that a lot of any benefit the XFL had to, hey, we had this fan base back in 2020, we spent all this time, I really think it's negated now, where you've had USFL, they're coming back for a second season, they're on Fox and NBC, they're both, prime time, a lot of games, weekend games. XFL's doing this, okay, Thursday night, Monday night, okay, it's Saturday evening, it's Saturday night. they're Fox and NBC, they're normalizing a lot of those time slots, and I do think they're going to exceed ratings. I think that people are going to be very surprised with how good USFL season 2 ratings are. I do think.
Oh, definitely. The jury will be out on that one, and we will definitely see what things look like. Because I know that back in 2019, had the AAF survived, of course, we know it ran out of money, that sort of thing, then finished their season. That came a year before the 2020 iteration of the XFL, and there would have been even more of a clash than what I think is being even talked about even now. And I do agree that I think for next season, XFL, ESPN, Disney they really should normalize the windows, have consistent windows, because even NFL, I know 1 o'clock, 4:25, 8:15 on Sundays, 8 o'clock Mondays, even for casual folks, they know what's going on. This stuff you have to hunt. And then what do you think of the streaming factor in all of this? We know that the numbers are not there. They don't release numbers. But how do you think streaming is going to impact the enjoyment of some of these games?
Well, I think you have a lot of XFL apologists that say, hey, the ratings are down, but we don't know how many people are on streaming. Could be 500,000 people. I don't think it's that much. I think obviously there's a non-zero number. Disney, ESPN, and Redbird, obviously they're going to have their own metrics of what they're looking at, and they're said they're coming back for season 2, and we know this is a thing. So, it's not cause for concern, but, I hear anecdotally people, oh yeah, I never watch it on FX. I'm watching it on ESPN Plus. But I just don't like that as a crutch, right? Well, ratings are down, but God, there could be 250,000 people. We just don't know. I don't think we're doubling the ratings on ESPN Plus right now.
Going back to the fact that now we've got these two leagues, XFL, USFL, now, what does that future hold in terms of the chances of the leagues surviving in the long term? Because the history of spring leagues in the United States has been pretty fraught. And then, of course, people do enjoy CFL and all the other, leagues, and you cover all of them on your podcast here. So what does the future look like in the long term? In the immediate term, I think both leagues may very well exist. I think the opportunity for players is key. But what do you see in that for both XFL and USFL?
One of our frequent contributors to our show is Paul Reese. He's literally wrote the book on, he's a USFL historian, published book author in terms of all this. And we've had him on talking. There's never been a time in the history of alternative football that you've had more money and resources behind either of these spring leagues, right? So whether it's the XFL, whether it's the USFL, we're really at a peak right now, especially with Fox in the USFL. We own the league outright. We can plug it in wherever we need to plug in. We can offset expenses by using a lot of our own people. I mean, I think Fox, for better or worse, and I get called the big USFL hater all the time, is really set up of we could ride this for 10 years and we never need to get above 2 million viewers. We're always going to be happy. We're always going to fit in. We can plug in. It's better than running, airing repeats of like Con Air on a Saturday afternoon or whatever. Like, we got something, we own it, we can put it up on streaming, people can do for all that. XFL, they really want to create this secondary league and opportunities, and we don't want to rival the NFL, but we want to kind of be a complement. I think they have a very different model. I get asked all the time, like, well, are these leagues going to merge? They have to merge. Yeah, maybe down the line, but one of them is going to have to fundamentally change the way that they view what they are. Because I do think that right now they're two opposing visions.
Yeah, and I want to get back, real quick to something you just said right now, that some people consider you a USFL hater, and I do see that in a lot of the Twitter sphere, and for some of these guys, I think that some of the approach that the USFL took with one of their ads, was like, this is real football or whatever this stuff is. I do think that it smacks of a little bit of insecurity, and things, because I think you have to be confident in your product and things of that nature. And there is a certain tribalism, I think, that goes on. I think on all of it, really. What do you make of some of this? Because I think at the end of the day, the opportunities for players, no matter what league it is, I think is very, very important. So, speak on that a little bit. Speak to some of the stuff that the USFL did in the commercials, because I think if you want to attract people to watching this stuff, because right now, if we look at ratings and things of that nature, I think the ceiling is so far. I mean, the jury will be out on the rest of this, especially with the USFL starting back up. But it's like there seems to be finite number right now of those who will watch alternative football, and you want to attract people. So riff on that a little bit, please, for me.
You'll never hear me. You'll never hear me criticize any player, coach, anyone trying to succeed, trying to get a spot in anything. I think that nowadays people view, criticism, especially constructive criticism, as like hating on anything, right? And constructively criticizing these leagues as a way to help them succeed in the future. Like, for example, today XFL released their new replica jerseys to the tune of $190. I don't think that's a great idea, right? And that doesn't mean that I hate the XFL or I hate Danny Garcia or The Rock, but I think that we can say whatever. The reason why Fox is in the spring football business right now is because of the successes of XFL 2020 with Vince McMahon. I do very much not like the fact that the USFL came in, Fox, whatever, took a lot of the things that worked, said we're going to do them our own now. These are our rules. These are and took credit for a lot of things that they worked alongside other people that it was success by committee, right? And now we're going to take this and move on. Now you see the XFL come back and people go, oh, they have the same rules as the USFL. Isn't that weird? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So I don't like that. I'm a big fan of credit and giving credit where it's due. And I just, XFL 2020 begat USFL 2022, and now that's in turn, working towards XFL 2023 and what they're doing or not. But I don't like this. We're going to take credit and not give whatever. That is what I'm critical of.
That I'm with you 100%, because when the rules were revealed last year, stuff not exactly original and things of that nature, and it's like, again, at least acknowledge the stuff, right? At least acknowledge this.
But
And
even XFL now, they don't really acknowledge Sam Schwartzstein. He was the one that made the rules back in 2020. So now you even have XFL 2023. Well, we're that old league, but please don't associate us too much. So you have USFL 2022, now 2023, taking a lot of this stuff, not wanting to give acknowledgement, and now you even have XFL itself not wanting to give acknowledgement. So you're like, well, when do the people that did this back in 2018 to 2020, when do they get credit for all the work that they put in? Where's All for Lux trophy here and all this?
right. Oh, I agree. Tell our viewers about the Markcast. Tell us more about it, how that came to be, and how people can support that.
Yeah, so originally, we started really focusing on the XFL. That was kind of what drew us into being all football fans, and I kind of missed the whole AAF window and really came in strong with XFL 2020 and felt really inspired to want a podcast when Danny Garcia and The Rock and everybody, came back and bought the league out of bankruptcy. Slowly, or I guess quickly, realized that the XFL really doesn't exist on an island, right? We have USFL and we have the players and coaches jumping, and with the CFL and fan control football, and so you get a lot of podcasts and shows now that focus on one specific. We talk USFL every week, and I just don't think that does justice to knowing the whole picture of the story. And so we try to cover them as much as we can every week. We do CFL, content regularly, even during the off season. And then obviously with the USFL coming back, we did a big pre-show today and the XFL weekly content as well, because it all exists together. We have our YouTube channel, themarkcast.com/watch. We'll take you there, or you can go to themarkcast.com/listen and check out the audio. And like and subscribe. I do this basically for free. It's kind of a paid internship to the league, I feel like. So I'm happy to get any support I can.
Absolutely, Reid. And I hope that someday this really becomes, between what you're doing and some of the stuff that I see so many other folks are doing as well. Also, shout out to Mike Mitchell and there's so many other folks within the community who are doing this. I hope that, again, getting on the ground, sort of the ground floor, and kind of going up will be great, because I think a rising tide lifts all boats. And one other thing that just came to me that I want to ask you as well before we leave here today, and again, thank you so much for doing this, is what is thinking about the casual fan here, right? Thinking about the casual sports fan, what is in it for them in terms of supporting these alternative leagues, whether it's XFL, USFL, etc.? Because a lot of people, I think it's fair to say, are drawn to stars. You know, your Patrick Mahomeses of the world, you know, your Tom Brady's, who of course have since retired, even Baker Mayfield for better or worse. But but really, what is in it for them? Why should people really support these leagues? I think there is something to be said about discovery, you know, of these people who could get on NFL rosters. What do you think?
Yeah, so first and foremost, the gameplay always has to stand on its own, right? For besides all this other stuff, and I do think USFL last year towards the end of the season and XFL this year, the gameplay is good, right? If you like football, if you understand like this is what it is, slightly less down. Same with the CFL, right? It's not the 99%, it's like the 97%, right? We're getting in there. But besides that, tracking these player stories, I never understand. And we have a lot of guys on that do draft scouting and know all these players. You'll follow this guy all through college, right? You'll know everything, and then he doesn't go in the draft, or he goes where you don't think he's going to go, or he gets cut, and it's like, well, I don't care about that guy ever again. It's like, no, these players all still exist, and you need to have a place where they're going to excel, and maybe they make their way back, maybe they don't, maybe you watch their story unfold there. We have AJ McCarron here, gave up, what was it, a $5 million contract in the
Oh
NFL.
yeah, to be a backup.
Yeah, but to play here in the XFL and be in front of his kids. I mean, these
Yeah.
stories, these are guys that you've tracked the whole way through their professional career, and they just, well, they didn't make it to the NFL. I don't give a crap anymore. Like, I just never understood that mentality. Obviously, you're always rooting for players to come back. Look at Taylor Heineke and get Teamu back in there. We get Donald
PJ
Parham.
Walker's had success, in the league at NFL, started off in the XFL.
Well, PJ Walker is probably going to play a lot of snaps this year for the Chicago Bears unless they can protect Justin Fields. So, I mean, there you go. PJ moved into that. Taylor Heineke now signed, I believe it was a $20 million deal
with the Falcons, right?
So, so you're tracking these guys, but regardless of anything else, the football, like I said, has to stand on its own. I think both leagues are at the point now where they have enough talent that they can do that. And then if you get guys to the NFL afterward, I think that's going to be good.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's, again, the discovery of these players. And I think also as well, Reid, quite candidly, I think that these players, they play with a lot of heart. They play with a lot of heart. Everybody's being paid about the same, with the exception of the quarterbacks. They're paying the quarterbacks, of course, this is not comparable to say like a Jalen Hurts or a Patrick Mahomes, that type of thing. I want our viewers to know that. But, otherwise, most people are being paid about the same and things. So I think it really reflects. I think the quality of the gameplay has been really, really good, and I hope that this stuff will continue. And I really hope, Reid, that you and everybody else in the alternative football community will continue to do the work that you guys are doing, because I think you guys are bringing great context to these games, to these leagues. I would dare say even better than some of the stuff that we see from major sports enterprises. So the Markcast, I want our viewers to make sure to check this stuff out. Reid Johnson, host of the Markcast, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Do join us next month for the season finale of Fit to Speak from the Archives, in which we will revisit both of my commentaries on the late civil rights activist Edward C. Lawson. Now, Edward C. Lawson may be somebody who you haven't heard of. I did not hear about him prior to doing the commentaries about him on the regular edition of Fit to Speak. But once you get to know him, once you read up on his history like I have, you will very much wish that he was still alive. You'll very much wish that he's still with us today. So I hope you will be able to join us and get to know him again. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, including our Substack page for the exclusive monthly Common Sense newsletter, and to support all of the work that we do here. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. Until next month, I'm Eugene Obah. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, the best things in life are worth saving.